level of emission before dealing with it. That was my thinking. That's why I think that we cannot that we are not emitting a lot, so we have to just ignore this aspect. Thank you.
Good questions. Good questions you have asked. Let me try to reconcile the point regarding investment opportunities and risk. Normally, capital doesn't like to go into risky things. Yeah? Capital runs away like a rabbit from risk, we say. But we can create risk markets with bonds, and that's what an institutional response would be to deal with risky markets and lure capital into it. So climate risk bonds is one option, but a lot of it will have to be designed more like a fund. And that's why the global community has come up with a global green climate fund idea as investments which come partly out of taxpayer monies, sometimes blended with private sector funding. A second aspect is these investments need to be long-term, and that as in many OECD countries, rich countries, currently you don't get anything for savings because of monetary policies. I see an opportunity for well-defined markets for climate mitigation.
Thank you very much for these questions. Let me try to add to these responses on the Africa's contribution to greenhouse gas emissions, whether or not exogenous. So the quantitative measurements of greenhouse gas emissions show that this agriculture, forest, and land use sector contributes about 25% of the emissions. So this is roughly about 12 gigatons equivalent of carbon dioxide per year. Out of that, Africa's contribution from within this 12%, from these 12 gigatons, 14%, so basically we are talking about 1.5 gigatons of contribution. Compare that to the total amount of currently 52 gigatons equivalent of contribution, it is relatively small. That's why probably the first speaker was saying that it is exogenous. But at the same time, we cannot say that it's totally exogenous because every small thing matters, every action matters, so it's still a contribution to the overall climate change aspect. That raises also emphasizes the importance of mitigation actions here in Africa. And what is good about them, for example, many of these options which can be done for mitigation, like switching to renewable energy, have also other co-benefits. Instead of burning coal for electricity generation and polluting air that we breathe, if we can produce all that electricity from wind, from solar, from tidal waves and other sources of energy, that would be a win-win solution for both climate and for us for other aspects. On this sustainable land management returns, $3 to $6. So those numbers take into account the observed climatic risks. Yeah, but they may not perhaps fully take into account all the unprecedented risks that may emerge in the future. But at the same time, many of these SLM options are risk reducing. For example, if you apply conservation agricultural practices, which help maintain soil moisture for a longer period of time during droughts, that could be a risk reducing. So compared to control measures where we don't apply these conservation measures that could be better in terms of during the changing climate